Well, there's no secret that the Flying Squirrels are all about baseball, affordable family fun and entertainment at the Diamond. But what would a baseball game be to the adults without that refreshing drink, beer? I'm here at Center of the Universe, also known as Co2 in Ashland, Virginia, where beer and baseball come together. A couple of years ago, in the Flying Squirrels' 5th season of existence, Richmond teamed up with Chris Ray and his brother Phil here at Center of the Universe to come up with a product known as chin music. You might have enjoyed it at the ballpark. We're here today, and I caught up earlier on with Chris and company to find out exactly how chin music is made. Let's see if we can get a fresh taste off their canning line. Chris, tell us a little bit about your baseball background and your beer background.
Well, I went to William & Mary for college, played baseball there, and then ended up getting drafted in 2003 to the Baltimore Orioles. Spent my time in the big leagues there from 2005 to 2009, and then afterwards bounced around to Texas, San Francisco, and Seattle.
Closing out games in the major leagues. How do you develop a love for craft beer, and how did you get to Center of the Universe?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit stressful closing out games out there, so it's nice after the game to have a couple cold beers. And after getting tired of paying for them, I decided, why don't I try my hand at brewing my own.
What is the name Center of the Universe Co2?
So Center of the Universe, we kind of borrowed from Ashland, Virginia. That's where I live. What we kind of consider the Center of the Universe is where you live, taking care of the people around you, realizing where you are and what your actions do to affect others. So the center of our universe is where we're located and where our beer reaches.
So you team up with Parney, us at the Richmond Flying Squirrels, poof, chin music is born. What is chin music?
So chin music, well, the beer is an amber lager, really nice, easy drinking beer, but the term chin music is the notion that when a pitcher throws a ball right underneath the batter's chin, whether it's to send a message, whether it's to back the hitter off the plate.
Did you ever throw a little chin music in your day?
I might have.
I can look at the archives, all right? Maybe, okay.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, yeah.
So the chin music itself, an amber lager, tang German hops. Can you explain a little bit about what it is and what its the goal is essentially as a beer?
The Vienna lager is the type of style that the beer is, and we wanted to brew a beer that had the craft flavors, so you get a little bit of caramel, you get a little bit of sweetness, some breadiness, but also was real approachable. So it's only 5% alcohol. It's kind of a beer that everybody can drink, and it's not going to have any kind of upsetting or off-putting flavors to it. So we wanted everyone to be able to enjoy some chin music.
Crisp, clean, a beer that you can drink at the stadium on a hot summer afternoon. Definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between lager beers, which is what a chin music is, and some of the other beers and just beers in general that are ales, not lagers?
Basically, it's talking about the yeast that's used. So an ale yeast is a top fermenting yeast. It ferments a little bit warmer temperatures, and it injects a lot more of the flavors into the beer, whereas a lager is made to really accentuate the type of malts that are being used, the hops, and it's a real clean, crisp type of yeast strain. And then the term lagering is basically cold conditioning. So after the beer is brewed and it's fermented, we leave it in a tank and we cold condition it for a while and let it get real smooth and easy to drink.
Lagers take longer to brew, so sometimes you don't see some of the smaller breweries really use lagers because they just take up more space.
Sure, yeah, it takes.
So how much space is chin music taking up here at Co2?
Takes up some big tanks. It takes up some big tanks, but in the end, I mean, sometimes having a lager is nice. It's nice to be able to drink something where it's refreshing, it bounces off the palate, and you're ready for another one.
I agree. Let's take a look at how it's made. This is the equivalent for me and many others entering Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Behind me is where the magic happens. Let's take a look. The birth of chin music begins with the grains. The grains are first malted, that is roasted or kilned much like your favorite coffee beans, and delivered to the brewery on site. Different grains provide different types of flavors and body for the beer. Chin music uses 4 different types of malted barleys in the process. Once the grains have been selected, they're sent into the grist mill for crushing. This allows for easier access to the sugars and starches inside the grain. After the grain has been milled, it's added to the mash tun for a process known as mashing. Hot water, as hot as 175 degrees, is then added to the grain in an effort to convert the grain starches into sugars. After about an hour's time, the starches have been converted, and the liquid created is a sweet, sticky substance known as wort. The mash temperature is then raised over 200 degrees to stop the enzymes from converting any farther, a process known as mashing out. The new liquid created, the wort, is then transferred into a large boiling kettle. leaving behind the husks and spent grain in the mash tun. Don't worry, this grain does not go to waste, as most brewers donate the grains to local farmers for livestock. Once added to the kettle, the wort is brought to a boil for a period of 60 to 120 minutes, pending on the type of beer. This is where the hops and other ingredients are added to flavor and level out the wort. Once the hops have been added and the boil is complete, the wort is then chilled or cold crashed down to a specific temperature and transferred once again, this time into the conical shaped vessels known as the fermenter. Once in the fermenter, the liquid is converted into beer as the microorganism yeast is added or pitched in. The yeast gets to work immediately eating the sugars that were created during the mash. As they consume the sugar, the yeast expels carbon dioxide and alcohol, as well as a variety of flavor compounds that vary greatly depending on several variables such as the specific strain of yeast and fermentation temperature of the beer. After the fermentation process, the yeast eats the sugars and then fall to the bottom of the tank, becoming dormant, but still alive to be used in the next batch. One final step remains as the beer is transferred once again into the conditioning tank to clean and finish the product. After the conditioning tank, it's either bottled or, in Chin Music's case, canned, which you can see is a pretty neat process in and of itself. All of that work, Chris Ray, for this.
There you go.
A lot goes into it.
Yes, sir.
Shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. Cheers. Refreshing.
Tasty.